me, your host, Sean Lynn, in the pub for a Dram with Friends, where we talk about faith, family, food, and fun. Pull up a chair and I'll pour you a drink. Episode 14. We welcome Joseph Pearce into the pub, author, professor, and convert. Sit back as I pour us a dram. Welcome to another episode of A Dram with Friends. We are extremely excited this evening to have my good friend Joseph Pearce join us here in the pub. Welcome, Joseph.
It's always good to be in the pub, and especially with you, Sean.
Well, I understand you're an Isla guy, so I brought out my Lefroy quarter cask. I'm going to pour a wee dram out of that. And what are you having tonight?
Well, I've come pre-prepared, so to say. This is a small dram of Lagavulin, also Isla single malt whiskey. Probably my favorite of all. I don't know if it's quite as upfront smoky as Lefroy, and I don't know what the quarter cask is. Is that different from the standard Lefroy you get?
Yes, it's slightly different. I just had a little dram of it a couple weeks ago, so it's brand new to me. Oh yeah, it's not a heavy smell for sure, but
no. This also, this Lagavulin is light on the nose. You get the you get the smokiness, but when you taste it, it's a different matter.
Oh, mine's definitely got that smokier, heavier peat, but extremely large flavors, and I quite enjoy it.
What I like is the fact that, you know, with the Lagavulin, you get the intensity on the tip of your tongue, and then it sort of becomes all sorts of other things as it goes through your sinuses. It's going to be probably a 15-second finish. That's why you pay the extra for it. I normally drink cheap bourbon because I can't afford to be drinking the good stuff all the time, but I certainly appreciate when I do.
Yes, I too. It's funny, this started because I'd buy a nice bottle for like when my child got married or something like that, and I'd nurse them for quite a while, and so.
Well, that's why I said to Susanna, my wife. I said, you know, that I'll buy a bottle of. I mean, this stuff Lagavulin now is about $110 a bottle here, which I've never paid that much before. But I say it will last a year because, you know, this is something I sit by myself rarely, and will save until I have a guest who's actually going to enjoy it. Then I'll bring it out and we'll enjoy it together. Otherwise, I drink cheap bourbon because, you know, if I want to drink in any sort of quantity, then I can't afford to be drinking the $110 bottles. Simple as that.
I agree, and I there's lots of nice, really reasonably priced bourbons out there, and if you like the Isla, we found one that's a reasonably priced that I actually had on last week's show with Deacon Stephen, and it's called Scarabus, and it's a $60 bottle here, which is extremely reasonable for a nice Isla whiskey. So
yeah. So can you say that again to me so I can try to remember it?
Scarabus.
Scarabus. Okay, I'll bear that in mind because obviously I'm on the lookout for slightly cheaper versions of the palate that I like to indulge.
So, who is Joseph Pearce?
Well, if people don't know me at all, I'll give you the 2-minute Joseph Pearce 101, as they say in the United States. So I'm English by birth. I was born in the East End of London in 1961, so I'm an old man now. And I've been in the States since 2001. In fact, we moved here 4 days before 9/11. So a baptism of fire. I'm a convert to the Catholic faith from a background of agnosticism theologically and white supremacism politically. So I've come a long way from those days. I wrote my first book as a Catholic, which was a biography of Chesterton. That was published in 1996. I published several other books as a full-time writer in England. That was on the strength of my published volumes that I was offered a position to teach literature at Ave Maria University in the States, which is why I moved over here with my American wife. And we've since had 7 children, but that includes 4 miscarriages and a stillbirth. So we actually have 2 with us, our 18-year-old son, Leo, and our 12-year-old daughter, Evangeline. And we live in South Carolina. There you are, the 2-minute version.
Greenville, South Carolina, if I recall correctly.
Well, yeah, technically we live out in the sticks a bit, in the countryside. So we're about 20 miles or so south of Greenville, if you want to get accurate about things. But yes, in the upstate of South Carolina, about an hour south of the mountains, about 3 hours from the beach.
I was there having breakfast with my good friend Steve Wood last October, and I've got a daughter that lives in Kennesaw, Georgia, so we have an excuse to get down to that.
Well, if you get down here again, let me know so we can actually have a dram in the flesh, so to speak.
I agree. Now that I know that you're a Scotch man, I will definitely stop by and maybe bring a prize with me. One of the things that's quite interesting, because you talk about Ave Maria. So on the day of the recording here, it's November 9th, which is my son's birthday, who actually took a course from you at Ave Maria when he went there back in 2000, probably 10 or 11. Something.
Yeah. So the actual surname, Dudley, what was his first name? What's his Christian name?
Timothy.
Okay. Yeah. I can't say for certain whether the names sound familiar because I know you or because I remember him. I'm better at faces than I am with names. And yeah, I taught at Ave Maria from 2001 and until 2012. So it sounds as if your son would have been there towards the end of my time at Ave Maria, back in Ave Maria, Florida, obviously at that point. 2012
was when he graduated. And what's interesting, talking about the pub, was he was a young man, and in Canada, you're legally, well, in Alberta, you're legally allowed to start drinking at the age of 18. So
very civilized.
He went down to Florida when all of a sudden he wasn't allowed to drink anymore, but that didn't stop him from, and I forget the professor's name, he got a professor on board to start a beer club so that they could critique beers. And so
that was a brave professor, because although I certainly believe that the 21-year rule is a product of Puritanism, and there's an unhealthy attitude towards fermented and distilled beverages, I would not have encouraged people to break the law, even if I thought the law was an ass, so to speak.
Yeah, no. I'm sure it was all academic. I don't think Tim would have broken the law down there with his dad.
I actually have no problem. I have no problem with him breaking the law, but my problem is with my being accessory to the fact.
Yes. Well, his dad is a police officer, so we don't encourage that.
Well, there we are. In that case, we should probably change the subject, huh?
Yes. So where are you now?
Well, I don't have a teaching position at a university or college. So again, the short version, I left Ave Maria to take up a position at Thomas More College of Liberal Arts, which is in New Hampshire. And I was there for 2 years. And then I left to take up a position at Aquinas College in Nashville, Tennessee, where I was for 3 years. And then I was offered a position as director of book publishing at the Augustine Institute in Denver. So that's my position at the moment. I'm directing book publishing. I don't have a teaching position. But that being said, I'm teaching currently for a master's level course in imaginative literature for Memorial College online. And I was teaching until last week for the Albertus Magnus Institute, a course on Shakespeare online. And I was teaching for Homeschool Connections until about 2 weeks ago, an introduction to Dante online. So I am still teaching. And as you would gather from that was at high school and undergraduate and master's level, so at various
Wow.
levels as well.
So what you're saying is you're a smart dude, and
No, I'm saying what I'm saying, Sean, is I'm busy. That's what I'm saying.
well, our pastor at the parish that I go to is an Anglican convert, and Father Jonathan's homily yesterday, I don't know how he did it, but you would have loved it because he tied in COVID, Remembrance Day, which is coming up for us in 2 days, and then the Lord of the Rings. So
Oh, I like that. That's my kind of priest. I like that. And Remembrance
I
Day, of course, it's also Remembrance Day in England, although in England we normally celebrate Remembrance Sunday as the nearest Sunday to the 11th. So I think it was this past Sunday was Remembrance Sunday. But yes, 11th for the 11th day, the 11th month, 11th hour, 11th day, the 11th month in 1918, the end of World War One, of course.
And yes, my great grandfather was killed in World War One, so it's near and dear to our heart. My granddad fought in World War Two, and so my dad's getting up there, and he's asked me and my brother to take his place in honor of granddad and go deliver hampers for war vets. So we're going to do that this week. So
wonderful. Well, both of my grandfathers fought in World War One, and my paternal grandfather had a shrapnel wound in his chest, which was too close to his heart to operate on. So he had a piece of a German shell in his chest until the day he died. But my father was too young to fight in World War II, but many of my aunts and uncles did. But no fatalities in my family, amazingly enough.
well, and I was watching a documentary on Tolkien, and very much there's that inspired him to in his writing of the Lord of the Rings, didn't it? Or had some play in it.
Yeah, certainly his experience. There's a wonderful book by John Garth called Tolkien and the Great War, which I recommend. And Tolkien's experience in the Battle of the Somme, which has been one of the most horrific battles in human history, he described it as the animal horror of the Somme. And I think it's almost beyond our ken to really understand how horrific this War of the Machines was. And I think that this is the dehumanizing of warfare is when we get to World War One, and it's about poison gas and tanks and barbed wire, and it's no longer about fighting hand to hand and the older methods of warfare. It all takes a great deal of courage, but men are just being mown down by machine guns and shells, and as if they're cattle. And I wrote a play which was performed off Broadway, a short one off Broadway a few years ago, called Death Comes for the War Poets, which actually spoke about World War One, the two poets, Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen. Sassoon became a convert to Catholicism. So the three characters actually are Sassoon, Owen, so the two poets, but also a female spirit, Death. And the key component of it is not so much Siegfried Sassoon's conversion to Catholicism, but the conversion of Death. Because, of course, the way you perceive death, if you're a non-believer, she's like a hag, one of the weird sisters from Macbeth, a witch, threatening, heartless, cynical, evil, demonic. But once Sassoon becomes a Catholic, then she becomes almost angelic, almost a Marian figure. Because what is death then, right? It's deliverance from the land of exile and the vale of tears into the bosom of Christ. So it's really about the conversion of death itself that a conversion to Catholicism actually means. That's what the play's about, but it was inspired by World War One. So one thing at least I have in common with J.R.R. Tolkien is that we've both written works of literature inspired by World War One. He was there in the flesh, though. I only know it through secondhand accounts.
Well, that sounds very interesting, and I've got a son who's a drama major at university in Alberta here, and I know he's going to want me to ask if how I get my hands on that for him to look through.
Well, the play actually, Death Comes to the War Post, is published by St. Augustine's Press. So you can actually buy the script with an introduction by me from St. Augustine's Press. Alas, of course, the thing about drama is it was absolutely beautiful, and I went up there for the opening weekend and saw it performed about 5 times. Astonishing choreography, acting, the music, the set. What a good director and choreographer can do with just a two-dimensional flat piece of text amazes me. And I'm sort of hoping one of these days, God willing, that we can actually get it filmed, because it should be very cheap, relatively speaking, to film it, because only 3 actors, and you could really have just a stark black background because of the nature of what it is, with maybe a little bit of green screen. You wouldn't have to do any location shooting or anything. So
That
by filmmaking standards, it would be relatively cheap to do.
well, and that sounds like the perfect COVID project. As
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
so, for any of those looking to do some movies and watching this, please feel free to contact Joseph, because I think that sounds like a fantastic tool. And I know you appear in The Search, which is a great tool that we're working through right now at our parish. I'm leading one of the studies, and it's those tools that are readily available. Like this show is on a platform called Heroic Men, which is partnered with Formed, and just to reach out to people. And I'm using my whiskey to try and reach men. So
Listen, whiskey's one of the best way of reaching men, that's for sure. So using tried and tested methods here, that's good. No, it's certainly necessary that we use new technology, the latest technology, to teach and preach and practice the ancient truths. So no, it's difficult in this day and age to meet kindred spirits in old-fashioned pubs, especially in the year of COVID. So this is another way of doing it. I know I'm now regularly arranging Zoom meetings with in what we call the Flying Inn, named after Chesterton's novel of that title, with friends in England. Obviously, I can't see them very often, so it's the nearest we get to a pub. So we have a Zoom meeting, we've got our beer in our hands, and we talk about old times.
well, and one of the things that is near and dear to my heart is working with younger men and encouraging them. And in today's world, it's very hard for young men to figure out what a man is. And so one of the segments that I put into this broadcast, or whatever it is that we're doing, is, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
My 18-year-old self was a real mess, and I think the first problem my 18-year-old self is he wouldn't have listened to me. Um, but certainly, I think the key element that young people and young men need to know is that what love is and what it isn't, because I had no idea when I was younger. So the distinction between love as merely a feeling, an emotion to be gratified, which is essentially selfish, which is a worldly, erotic understanding of love, and the Christian understanding of love, which is to actually sacrificially lay down your life for the beloved, and even and very heroically if the beloved is your enemy. That's the challenge, and that's a rational choice, not an emotional, irrational feeling. And so, knowing the difference between those two understandings of love is life changing. And obviously, by the grace of God and through mentors such as Chesterton and Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, Hilaire Belloc, and others, I came to an understanding of that true understanding of love, as opposed to the false understanding of love that the world teaches. And I think most modern men, young men, are bemused and confused by an understanding of love, which is an erroneous understanding of love based upon self-gratification. And it, first of all, it's not only is it not chivalrous, it's not manly, it's not rational, it doesn't lead to happiness either for either partner. In any so-called loving relationship, that everyone's miserable when we try to form relationships based upon selfish gratification and not selfless sacrificing of ourselves.
Thank you very much for that advice. And now I've also instituted a new segment. Jeff Cavins talks about having your posse and your saints. So who is your favorite saint and why?
Well, I'm sure that everybody you've asked that question to answers in a similar way at first. I'll be boringly predictable. There are so many, and up to a point, it may change upon the day of the week. But if you want to pin me down with one, it's one that no one's going to predict, I would suggest, and that's the Jesuit martyr, the English martyr St. Robert Southwell or Southwell. Not only was he incredibly heroic, so imagine this priest that no one's heard of, who was first of all, I'm a literature person, was a major influence upon William Shakespeare. Many of Shakespeare's plays, such as Merchant of Venice, Hamlet, King Lear, Romeo and Juliet, allude to lines from St. Robert Southwell's poetry. But he came to England in the late 1580s, 1586, I think, knowing that when he was arrested, and it would be when, not if, he would be tortured hideously, and then be put to death by one of the most brutal, if there's anything worse than crucifixion, if there is hanging, drawn, and quartering. It's a very, very slow way to be put to death. And he came back to England to minister to England's Catholics and to win converts to the faith, knowing that this was going to be his destiny. This takes great heroism. And Elizabeth's spy network and government invented a new method of torture, which they claimed nobody could resist. And one of Queen Elizabeth's own men said that he had been there and seen St. Robert Southwell hanging with this torture device, and they could not get one single word from him. So this is a man who's a poet, and I would say it takes a man to be a poet, but someone who is a priest, who's a martyr, and who withstood extreme physical suffering through torture and a torturous death. For me, and a great influence upon the greatest writer who ever lived, William Shakespeare. Doesn't get better than that, Sean. Doesn't get better than that. So St. Robert Southwell is probably my personal patron. He's also, of course, as a writer, the official patron saint of writers is St. Francis de Sales. But for me, my personal patron as a writer is the great English martyr poet, St. Robert Southwell.
Well, thank you very much. I learned a lot today, and that is awesome. So I know you spent some time in Ireland, and so you might know that the origin of whiskey is a Gaelic word called Ishkabaha, which means water of life. And
I'm very aware of that.
My prayer is that you continue to do the work God's calling you to and lead many to the true water of life as we enjoy this water of life.
Thank you. Cheers, Sean. God bless you.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode of A Dram with Friends. Please send us an email at adram@godsquad or go to godsquad.ca to make a donation. Or if you want to contribute a whiskey that you'd like us to try, get a hold of us.